Affairs meeting for today to order. And Carly, you've done attendance, I guess, looking through who's here and not. She's covered that online, so we're good for that. So we don't have municipal directors or visitors today, but if we do have, I'd appreciate if people could give me a heads up in case you want to give some freedom of the floor to any of our colleagues. That said, we acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we're meeting today. Going to item 4 on the agenda, adoption of the agenda. I'm not aware of any changes. I don't know if staff has any updates or changes at all. So if there are none, I take a motion to adopt the agenda as presented, as persuaded, moved and seconded. No conversation on that, I guess. All in favor? Everyone in the room, people online as well, that is carried. We received the minutes of the 19th of March Rural Affairs Committee meeting. They went to board. I'm not aware of any changes. Staff not aware of any changes, so that's just received. So delegations, we do have one delegation. We have Richard Truman for the 7.1 subdivision in the ALR. And that being our first item of business, I would invite you please to join us at the board table. That way the microphone will pick you up adequately. Welcome, thank you for being here. So what I'd like to do is get a really brief, Sadie's here, get a really brief sort of Coles Notes overview of the application, and then ask if, following that, ask if you wanted to provide any new information as we discussed on the application, or if you're willing to simply answer questions from the committee. And then after that, we'll go into the recommendations, the options for recommendations as a committee to discuss. So the floor is yours, 7.1.
Perfect. Just 1 second here. Subdivision of the ALR. Okay, so this is a subdivision application within the ALR in Argenta and Electoral Area D. The parcel is about 4.05 hectares in size, and the proposal is to subdivide it into 2 parcels, one 2.75 hectares and one 1.25 hectares. Given that the application does seek to fragment ALR land, which is correlated with reduced agricultural activity and diminished farming potential, and because no compelling public or agricultural benefit has been demonstrated, staff are recommending that the board not support this application. Any comments or recommendations of the board will be forwarded to the ALC along with this application, since it's in an area without a zoning bylaw.
And so you have a staff recommendation, but within your report you have options for other recommendations as well. So thanks for that introduction. So Mr. Truman, the floor is yours.
Just give you a little bit of history on the land. So 10 acres, as said. I bought this land from my brother in 1988. The former partner on the Tennyson Common land was a man named Chris Young. Now, when I bought into the land with my brother, we had an in-house agreement between us, signed and lawyered, and Ray Johnson did a survey at that time that was the boundaries of the proposed partition, and it was submitted to ALR and accepted in 1987. The documents say that, and it's on a legacy file. I have the numbers for that. Now, my brother didn't go through with the subdivision because we got along really well, and it was sort of to his tax advantage, I think. He was out of the country quite a bit to have me as, at, Tennyson Common and the home and the registered homeowner. So that is the history of the land. Now, in regard to the agriculture on the land, it's a very steep piece of land. But my piece of land is lower down, and it's shaped kind of like the province of Alberta, and the garden sites are on that land, and I have a good sized garden. That's not the farm, but I'm trying to culture up commercial elder on the land, and Bill's it's all timber up high and just a sliver along the northern edge of the land. The driveway is the dividing line on between his and mine on the lower portion, And then, like I say, all the stakes are in the ground from a survey done in 1987. And agreed upon us and at a time of our choosing, or his choosing, that I would facilitate this subdivision. Now, it's not up to me, of course, but just to put it in perspective, so we've saved most of the land that's growable, and I'm doing stuff with the land. Oh, I also want to mention that I went to Cranbrook and had the water apportionment done. There's plenty of water on site for two. There always was, there always will be for two lots. There has been two lots living on there, two residences for the last 35 years, so essentially nothing's changing. But my brother would like to have two titles instead of one, so that he could gift that off. He's 81 now, to the person of his choice, or if he ended up low on cash, sell to a third party. And that's really all the history I have. It was nice of Sadie Jacinko to actually send me the document of approval in 1987, because I had talked to Ron Wallace for the last 2.5 years about this issue and how to go about it. And I've been very methodical and patient about how I go about it. And that's the legacy file, the history of the land. Like Ron Wallace communicated to me in verbatim things that I didn't even know about the land. So I knew that all this information existed, but that's what I have to tell you about the land. That's about it.
Great, thanks very much. So any questions from committee members? I have one on the speakers list now. So if you want to think if you have any questions, we have Director Watson. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. First, I just want to apologize. Richard, I didn't realize you were coming in person today. I would have done my best to be there. So sorry to miss you. I have meetings in Area D this afternoon, so I'm online. I will definitely speak to the application when we go into the business. I've read the soil capability. I understand what the land is. I'm not super familiar with it, but I do know the area, and I'll be supporting the application. My question to you as an applicant is related to, you had said, I know you have a big garden, but you mentioned something about other agricultural work that you were doing or leaning towards, and I just missed what that was, because I am aware you're doing quite a bit up there.
Sure, I just planted 16 bare root elderberries. I have indigenous elderberries growing all over the property, but I go with the dark purple Canadensis type, and I'm just in the fledgling stage of that. But I would, as I get older, like to have productive groves of elderberry.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question for the delegate, and then when we go into business, I would like to speak. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Director Papa.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I might have missed it or maybe misheard. You did apply for subdivision before, or you did not apply, but you had a preliminary
It was applied for in 1987, prior to me becoming the new tenant in common. Once my brother sold Young's portion to me, because what had happened was it was a forced sale in the court. And so I ended up buying Young out at government appraised value at the time. Once I had done that, he backed off the application, and they didn't finalize it. We should have finalized it right there on the spot. But now 30 years have gone by, and we're trying to get it done now.
So
Further, yes.
yeah, further, if I may. So you had preliminary approval, but you did not follow through on it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Further questions for the applicant, for the delegation? Double check chat. Not seeing any online or here. Okay. Oh, sorry, Director Vandenberg.
Through the chair, thank you. The preliminary approval that you were referring to, and I didn't quite catch it all either. Did you have something in hand that showed that conversation, documented that conversation, or was it something that you were working towards, so therefore it remained verbal and then it stopped?
I don't have the document in my documents at hand. My brother seems to not do as good a job of looking at the documents as myself. I have most of them, but I don't have that one, but, Sadie was kind enough to send me, the document.
So the answer is yes.
The answer is yes, it was approved. And there's no timeline on that approval.
Further?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so, thanks for responding to questions. If you wouldn't mind, Mr. Trim, to sit back in the gallery again, and we will get on with the business portion of this application. It's not even show up, I was trying to reverse my camera and it didn't work, so never mind. Sorry, in chat now we have, did I miss somebody? Watson again. Yes, on the recommendations, Director Watson, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. And I was able to communicate with Sadie yesterday. She's aware that I'm going to move support, but I'll give a bit of background on it first. I really respect what Sadie's recommendation is, and that's based on our agricultural area plan. And so she's following protocol. And I think when we go a different direction, I just want to note, I appreciate what she's doing. The reasons for me supporting the application is because the land itself, which straight from the report, the subject property has an unimproved agricultural capability rating of class 4 to 5, with limitations being topography and stoniness. The improved agricultural capability is the same, with 80% being class 4 and 20% being class 5. So this speaks to what we've been talking about with frequent applications, where the arability of the land that is in the ALR is very minimal. So this land is not actually arable. And it's really unfortunate that we have to go through this whole process, and there is no zoning, so the ALC could still say whatever we agree to, that it doesn't matter. So that does concern me. I know the property. I know that he's already doing what can be done on the arable portions. The rest that would be subdivided is not arable. It is actually forested, rocky land. So for those reasons, I would move support of the application, and in conversation with Sadie, I'd like the report or the response to the ALR to articulate the reasons being the classification of the land, and that the land...
Well, half second, are you moving option 2 support? Because you won't speak to it until you're moving option 2 support?
Yes.
Or are you going to wait? Okay, do we have a second for option 2 support? See a second. Okay, please go ahead there.
Thank you. Again, in conversations with Sadie, it is really important because there is no zoning in this area. We have a comment, it goes through us, but what they listen to is really subjective to their choice. So I had requested that we include the information that the reason why we are supporting it is due to the lack of arability, and that the portion that is arable is currently being farmed. So that is the justification for support.
Okay, so we now have a motion on the floor. We do have a speaker. Interesting is, when you have limitations of topography and stoniness, it sounds like trees are a good choice as opposed to a root crop. So we have Director Vandenberg and then Popoff at this time on the recommendation.
Great, thank you through the chair. So my question is to staff. Noting that I've seen the property, looks like the contour lines, you're about 120 meters from the west end to the east end, if that's the way it's laid out correctly. That's not my question. My question is around the significance or the relevance of a pre-approval in 1987 or whatever date it was from the ALC, because we're one step, and then it's still got to go to the ALC. So what is the likelihood, I guess I'm just curious more than anything, what is the likelihood that the ALC will recognize that agreement made in the past?
Yeah, through the chair, I did try and reach out to the ALC for comment on this application in terms of how the previous approval might be considered, but I haven't heard anything back yet. This application moved pretty quickly through, but what I gathered from looking at the previous approval, and Richard spoke with the ALC, and they had confirmed that another application was required, was that possibly it was because of the different layout. The previous layout was different from the current one, and so that may be the reason that the new application was required. The previous basically, like there's an ALC policy that says if there's no expiration date on the file, then they can continue it, but given the layout change, that's why I'm kind of expecting. But I truly don't know, basically the answer to your question, what way it will hold.
So I had indicated to our delegate that sometimes we blur the lines a little bit, and maybe there's a point of clarification that Mr. Truman could make here. I see you.
Yeah, I just want to respond. So when this first happened, Young had a couple of, he had a couple suggestions how they divide the land that were totally impractical, like straight up rectangle, straight up the middle, right? You know,
Yeah.
things like that were turned down. But the one that was approved is the one that was surveyed and mapped, and it's the one agreed upon by me and my brother. It's already done as far as we're concerned. They'll probably, they'd probably make us do a digital resurvey or whatever and get some money out of us. But yeah, just wanted to clarify that there's, it's just driveway, the way it's set up, it's, there's no other way to divide it.
Okay. So the old files might have a few different options. That
Yeah, I mean, the one that was, the serious one, the one that's mapped and surveyed was the one that was approved.
Okay, thanks. So we'll return to the committee then, and thanks for that, Bill. Director Vandenberg, further?
No, good, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Director Popoff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I, just listening to the applicant here, that it was, basically pre-approved back in 1987. And I realize the ALC members change over the years as they go on. But, if a former ALC looked at it and thought it was subdividable and gave a preliminary approval, but the applicant did not follow through on it, I would support this, I would speak in support of this application.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on the recommendation? Not seeing anyone else in the chat. So recommendation that would go to board tomorrow, we just make recommendations here, we don't approve, is option 2. So all in favor of the recommendation, which is option 2, support. In the room, we have all of us online. I see, yep, so that is carried. So thank you very much for coming in. And as I say, this will be automatically on the board agenda tomorrow. And the board gives the final approval from here and direction to staff to forward the application.
Okay, so just to clarify, you guys are gonna make a decision one way or the other.
Well, this recommendation goes to board. I don't expect board's going to debate this very much. Generally what happens is they look at what the committee's recommended. You're not asked to come tomorrow to the board.
No, that's fine, but will it be sent off to Ron Wallace at the Agricultural Land Commission, or will it just stay with you now?
So if the board, actually, let's say you speak to this. There's 3 options,
Okay,
just so it's clear. There's 3 ways it can go, and go ahead.
Yeah, so if the recommendation that RAC has given today is carried tomorrow, I'll basically send the resolution and your file to the ALC, and then they're gonna make the final decision. So ultimately it rests with them. Yeah, and we can chat.
Okay, thank you. So we will move on to item 7.2. This is non-farm use in the ALR, Columbia Basin Broadband Corporation. So this is the large project you would have heard Director Popoff and I report to you from time to time, where Columbia Basin Broadband Corporation has to establish a number of POPs or points of presence. It's across a huge geography, and they've been negotiating with private landowners, Ministry of Transportation, and Transit, and whoever to try and get these critical points approved. So we don't have a representative. I don't think anyone there, Christopher Pittman, I don't think anyone's online speaking for CBBC. To give a better overview than I just did, is this you say as well. Please give a better explanation, then we'll look at the recommendation.
Thanks. So, yeah, as Gary said, this is an application for a non-farm use within the land reserve on provincial crown land between Worthington Creek FSR and Doherty Road in Edgewood in electoral area A. And the proposal is to install a telecommunications shelter on the site in order to allow residents of the area to access high-speed internet. In this case, given the limited negative impact to agriculture and the strong public benefit associated with the proposal, staff are recommending that the board support the application and forward it to the ALC for their consideration.
Great, thank you. Actually, and so maybe I have speakers, Director Weatherhead and Popoff. Being where,
I'd like to move the recommendation for discussion.
okay, I was going to go to the area director first, but recommendation to support is moved by Director Popoff to the second. I see Director Weatherhead. Thank you. Anything further as mover? We'll go to Director Weatherhead.
Go to the area director first.
Director Weatherhead, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was pretty straightforward. There has been some difficulty finding places for these pop stations to be, either on land that's owned by a community, which this community currently doesn't own any land. And we don't have any regional district land that was appropriate. So nobody's going to be farming a piece of Crown, I don't believe, and it's a very small piece. So it seemed pretty straightforward and of course I support this.
Great, thank you. Further discussion, Director Popoff, you've been involved in this for a while as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The initial intent on these points of presence, or little buildings, as you would call them, was to put them in highways right away. We had some issues with Ministry of Highways about some locations, and this is, I don't know if this is an alternate location or not, or the initial location, but yeah, connectivity is very important to all of BC, not only our area, and I definitely support this application.
Thank you. Further discussion on the recommendation. Seeing none, nobody else in chat, so we'll go to vote, I guess. All in favor of the board support? I see online and here, any opposed? So that is carried. That goes to board tomorrow as well. Thank you.
So Chair,
Go ahead, Director Diekhoff. Yes.
yeah, I just wanted to just make a comment after this passed, if that's okay. Just
Go
a
ahead.
question. So just a question to staff or to anyone else, like, is anyone aware of any way of expediting things like cell towers or installations like this on Crown land? And is it maybe planning staff, or we just follow the regular processes through the chair?
Okay, so the broadband committee across the entire basin talks about this kind of thing. As far as possible, if the Columbia Basin Trust staff can work with the service providers in terms of that big project, that's best that they do the direct conversations. They've asked us to make sure that MLAs and MPs are informed. So we have on the elected side provided briefings to all of the regional districts, and we span across four on that project. And we do cover pretty well everything, not just the fiber optic projects, but we talk about cell coverage and gaps and stuff like that. So we have advocated and given presentations. We sort of rotate. I guess I gave the one to Kootenay Boundary. Walter, Director Popoff, did you give one of them to East Kootenay, or I can't remember who? We have been advocating at the political level with local government. We have advocated with provincial MLAs, and we've had some conversation with MPs. Just in general, that we try to see that there's no undue barriers. Otherwise, when it's the private applications, they really have to go through staff. Like if it's the Rogers or the TELUS, there's protocols, things to follow. I don't think we've, other than just general awareness of our problems, we haven't delved into those prior to staff giving their recommendations. Director Popoff, is that accurate enough?
Yeah, that's pretty close, if I can say that. What happened was MLA Conroy, there was myself and a couple of other members of the connectivity committee. We gave a presentation to MLA Conroy. Now that we've got MLA Morissette, I'll probably follow through. I had a meeting with him a while back, and I did mention connectivity is very important in our area. And when we look at trying to expedite that, I believe I would arrange a meeting with MLA Morissette if it's in our area here.
That is a good point, because we have kept the political side there. Did I see a hand over here? Director Vandenberg, and then Sadie, maybe you could talk about sort of the cell tower applications if you're able. Director Vandenberg.
All right, thank you through the chair. Just a clarity question through to Director Davidoff. When you suggest the word expediting, are you then also referring to the bypassing of public engagement, including local officials? Just want to be clear on what you mean by expediting.
I think we still need to include our constituents and local officials. It's just we're really frustrated, and I'm sure Director Popoff is as frustrated as I am. We've been waiting for our Shaw/Rogers towers to go up in Pass Creek and Cristova, and now we have received an exhaustion report because they have looked at all private land options and nobody's interested in doing having the tower, and we're stuck. And the only option left are Crown land. So I'm just wondering if there's some way, and I get it's political, and I'll stop there.
And so, of course, Director Vandenberg's question was through the chair. So we're off topic, and this isn't on the agenda, and it's always unfair to ask staff to comment on stuff. We're just going to go another minute or so on this, because there is the FCM protocol. I believe we've always followed that. It's gone through staff. Sadie, do you have anything to add before we go back to the agenda?
Yeah, I would just say that if there's any interest in understanding how the cell tower proposals are considered by planning staff, you can look in the planning procedures and fees bylaw. It's set out and adopted by the board. It's a little different on Crown land than it is on private land, but if anyone has some questions, feel free to reach out.
And the one bit I will add is that part of, I think, why we have made sure our MLAs, MPs, and our peers across the other regional districts are all sort of aligned and have the same information is there's always deals being made. Like TELUS was given a large amount of money to provide cell connectivity in critical areas with gaps. We have no idea what those deals are. Staff has no idea what additional contribution from whatever level of government might encourage Rogers or TELUS or whoever to go ahead with a cell tower. We don't know. All we can do is just keep broadcasting the message. We still have gaps. We still have needs. And staff are always here to listen to or review any applications. So, yeah, we're not going to relent, and it's valid that you bring it up, I think, Director, because next Connectivity Committee will make sure that the current MLAs are well informed, and in a couple of weeks we'll make sure that whoever's member of Parliament is well informed about our situation, because they're both funding streams.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, for all that you and Director Popoff do to advance these concerns and options. Thank you.
Okay, we will return to the agenda then. So, thanks, Sadie. So, Nelson, you're going to run through this next one. This is sort of a recap and update, I guess, on the very big topic of your work plan. So we'll just let you open, Nelson. You've got quite a bit of information. You recapped what you've provided us in terms of work plan. Let me check chat. Did I miss somebody here? I'm sorry, Director Weatherhead. Did I miss you on that conversation?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll pass. Thank you.
Yeah, my apologies. Just looking through the room, I missed that. Nelson, planning insights.
Thank you, Chair.
Good. Go ahead.
As you know, we've been engaged in this discussion around our work plan and possible different approaches to that work plan for a little over a year, I suppose now. And so we're coming back to you with a summary of what we've heard through those discussions at both the February workshop and then the one in December. So that's the What We Heard report, which is attached here. I'm going to get to that perhaps more at the end of this presentation. And before I do that, walk through as a reminder where we're at with our current projects, or what we're calling the near-term projects, and also what's left on the work plan, just as a reminder for everybody. And so the near-term projects, just a recap, that was the list that was approved by the board. Remember, we broke it up into two categories. We've got the ones that were actively engaged or just about to begin, and so in September, there was endorsement of those projects that were already on the work plan, that we called them the near-term projects, and then the remaining would be the ones that we haven't yet started and or are paused. So let's go through them again just as a recap. this is a list of those projects, and we're going to go through them one by one, and just to remind you where we're at and what they're about. So the first one up is the area IOCP adopted at the last meeting. Accompanying zoning bylaw changes are coming before the board for adoption tomorrow. So that was coming to a close in terms of the approvals. There's still, of course, lots of work to be done by staff in terms of the how we implement that and communicate to the public any changes there. There's also some additional work to be done with the development development permit area implementation. And just a note, as we go through these projects, you're going to see the description, anticipated date of completion, where the money came from for that, and also just what electoral area applies to. So this one, of course, is Area I. And the funding comes from just the general planning services function. Next one is the Development Permit Area Enforcement Framework. So this originated mostly at the KLP table, where there was a resounding, need to increase our ability to enforce our development permits in the environmental development permit areas specifically, because we're just seeing such a lot of unauthorized activities. And this was a mechanism we saw for the other local governments that could strengthen our enforcement activities. That one we anticipate could be completed towards the fall of this year, and again funded through planning services, and would affect areas A, G, and H. It is available to other areas that have those environmental BPAs, but it was just A, G, and H who requested that to come forward in their areas. Flood hazard policy and regulations review. This one's been on our work plan for a number of years, but has now just been activated. And you may remember it's come before you a few times so far to approve where we got direction from the board to make application for funding. And we were successful in getting that funding through the Disaster Resilience and Innovation Funding Program. And that RFP went out on Monday. So we will be in about a month's time looking to select a consultant to help assist us in that work. So you'll see there from the budget is mostly grant funded, but of course in kind for the staff wants to work to administer that.
So Nelson, when you say it came through, we have funding confirmation as of Monday, you're saying on that one, that application?
The funding was confirmed some time ago that we were successful. What happened on Monday was we released the request for proposals to see.
Okay, yeah, so it's not another funding, it's just carrying on. And then we have Director Watson. She said when she has discussion, but this is a big topic. How do you prefer, Nelson? Like take questions as per?
I'd say, yeah, maybe I'd defer to you, Chair, like just making sure we're staying on track, but I'm happy to field any questions for clarification as I go.
Yeah, because the clarification I just asked, we get lost down the road. But so if we go to maybe Directors Watson and Newell, we'll quickly try and clarify as you go ahead. Director Watson, please go ahead.
Sorry, mine is not clarification. It's quite a bit more. I just want to be on the discussion list. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll hold that. Okay, and then Director Newell.
In regard to this particular one, flood hazard policy, will it touch upon the RD potentially becoming a diking authority? Would that be involved in this at all, or is that?
That would be out of scope, Chair, to this project. It's focused specifically on updating the regulations around flood hazards. And as noted, it'd be for all electoral areas plus several.
Thank you.
Thanks, and those are good questions for now. Please go ahead.
Next up is the subdivision servicing bylaw review. And so this project involves reviewing and updating the servicing requirements for newly created lots, subdivision, so ensuring alignment with recent provincial legislative changes and appropriate use of local government authorities. Just another note on the funding here, this one, we are able to use the local government housing initiatives capacity funding, which we received previously for this work, which is good news. So that allows us to, again, accomplish this sooner than otherwise because we can seek the assistance of consultants in doing that work to get it done more quickly. You'll note our target date would be a little over a year from now to be completed. Just to note that RFP had gone out and closed at the end of April, so we'll be selecting a consultant to help us with that work, and that would be for all electoral areas.
So a question, sure, go ahead, Director Popov. Yeah, and thank you, Chair, to the Chair. On subdivision servicing bylaw, we're not the approval authority on subdivisions. Now, if we have a problem, how do we address the problem with the Ministry of Transportation not approving the subdivision, or what is the process is what I'm asking.
The approving officer, Chair, must give consideration to whatever local government bylaws are relevant to the work they're doing in approving subdivisions. The primary bylaws of interest would be this subdivision bylaw as well as our zoning bylaws. That would dictate how they make their decisions. So that would be the way that we have influence in those decisions.
The supplemental,
Go ahead, yes.
I guess the question is, do they have to abide by our referral to them? If so, one of the items are not met and they not approve a subdivision, have you ever run into that problem, or what is the process of resolving that if that does happen?
Yeah, Chair, that due to the Director Popoff, that has happened on occasion where we have been frustrated in the interests that we want to see addressed. The approving officer not being able to do, being unwilling, I guess, to do that. And the, I guess, message back from that approving officer has always been, if it's for those things that are really important, it's best to have them enshrined within the bylaws in order that they can address them. Otherwise, they're guided, I guess, by whatever other rules exist within the Local Government Act. One that comes to mind in terms of, it's somewhat generic, but looking out for the public interest. And that particular clause is one that we've advocated for certain best practices be observed, and there's a difference of opinion, and it lands the authority rests with the approving officer. That's why I think the best we can do is strengthen our bylaws in order to convey our interests most clearly, and in order that they can be respected and adhered to by the approving officer.
Thank you. That answers my question, but it opens up an opportunity for us lobbying with the Ministry of Highways regarding this.
Yeah, the spectrum of public interest could be maximum environmental protection versus maximum affordable housing in Dale Clash. Director Vandenberg.
Right, thank you through the chair to Nelson on this. I just want to understand the verbiage here a little bit under project description. This project involves reviewing and updating servicing requirements for newly created lots prior to subdivision. So these are lots that are within an application process, so are being considered. Correct? It's not that they've been approved by any means at this point. This is for the purpose of approval. Is that correct? Do I understand this correctly?
Chair, I can through to Director Vandenberg, I believe you do. This bylaw is what sets the standards for servicing and other matters pertaining to subdivision of new lots.
Okay, thank you. And supplemental, if I may. I want to talk about bylaw. Where is the ability to have policy serving best practices as opposed to, what's the advantage of locking it into a bylaw versus just creating a policy that could give you more flexibility perhaps, but maybe perhaps the bylaw does that for you. I need to understand why you would choose a bylaw over a policy of best practice.
Chair,
Yeah, go ahead. I think you just said that.
I think that's a really good question though, because I came from a municipal world where your approving officer works for that organization and respects the policies of that organization. Here in the regional district is a little different model because that approving officer function is outside of our organization and they do not need to adhere to our policies.
That being
correct. And
They need to
limitation.
consider our bylaws.
That's correct. That's a limitation I see in this model as I experience it in the regional district world, and a bit of frustration sometimes. And so that's why it's best that we capture the policy intent of our OCPs as best we can in the regulation in order that the approving officer can respect that.
Okay. Consider. We don't have a definition of consider either. Director Watson, please go ahead. So I hope this is helpful, and then you've got quite a bit to go through, but if we address topic by topic, please go ahead, Watson.
Yeah, thank you. So specific to subdivision, with the few in my area, what I've come to learn is that when you have no zoning, the only provisions is the subdivision bylaw. When you have zoning, you have the subdivision bylaw as well as your zoning that can be very prescriptive to what MODI can or cannot approve. Lacking in the zoning component means we really have no say. So I really want to understand how, I have no problem with this bylaw, but if we're really looking for more of that ownership teeth over the impacts of subdivision, when will zoning be included with this? And am I understanding that correctly? I want to just note that some of the issues here with the subdivision is that we're seeing major parts of land being subdivided where they're keeping the access to those lands private. And the developers are the ones responsible for things like road care and access to properties. And that is becoming a huge issue, or water access only communities. So the real gap in our teeth is no zoning. So looking for staff comment on that.
And you've got zoning further down the list, but I guess briefly now, and then we'll get to it more detail.
Chair Chapman, to Director Watson's question, it's I think an accurate statement that the zoning is really helpful in guiding some of those decisions. And also, Director Watson's pointing out, one of those friction points we had is on that common law for access issue with MODI specifically, and certainly those are challenges that we face. And in terms of when zoning will be done, you're right. That is, I think, a discussion to be had at this table and with the board to set the direction for when we would undertake that project.
Are we good for now to carry on down the list? Or further, Chair Watson, Director Watson?
I'll leave it for now. I've got a lot more later.
Yeah, noted. Go ahead, Nelson.
Okay. Regional Local Community Needs is a project you're certainly well aware of, and it's intended to support land use management by building a shared understanding of future needs, such as service and capacity, and fostering a regional framework for coordinated discussions on development. This was one that was also funded 100% through UBCM, and we have a target completion date of the end of this year. So that work is, I'd say, probably about halfway done, and we continue to work with our consultant team and our municipal partners that are part of that project. And those are all electoral areas, and then the municipal partners, including Castlegar, Preston, Castle, Nelson, Selmo, and Slocum. And then the last on this list of near-term projects is local government housing initiatives. Official community plan amendment. So a year ago, you may recall, the project was to update our zoning bylaws first. That was the direction we received from the province. So we did that to address the housing needs and ensure that there are no barriers for additional housing units to be a possibility on our residential lots. So that was the small scale multi-unit housing, or SMUT was the acronym you may recall. This work follows up on that and ensures that our OCPs are consistent, that any changes we made to those zoning bylaw changes have appropriate change within our OCPs to ensure that consistency rule is met. This is also funded, is eligible under the funding that we got from the province, and that funds our staff costs. So that's really helpful, I think, to relieve some of the burden of taxpayers because we're able to benefit from that provincial funding. And just a picture of what those, just to look at a timeline. On the left, you'll see how we're projecting those projects to be completed, and you'll see through to the end of the year, pretty fully engaged with our staff time to those projects, and some extending into 2026. Now, next on the list are the paused or not yet started projects. And
Director Van.
I will say, Mr. Chair, you're not quite on the game today.
I'm
For me, anyway.
trying to make notes, because when the minutes come, and not knowing how much Carly's gonna include here, so I'm sorry. Go ahead,
So
Director
if I may,
Van.
through the chair, I'm just gonna touch on two things, because in the beginning, I thought we were gonna wait till the end for questions, but that's fine. On this last, slide, near-term projects, my question around, the amendments, am I the right one? Oh, yeah, near-term projects, the amendments that were required through Bill 44. Do they get implemented within the actual OCP? So therefore, if I want to know what's going on with my OCP, I just go and find it and I'll expect to see all these changes in it? Or is it an attachment that people will have to try to find to ensure they understand what the current status of an OCP is?
Chair, the RAC and board have not seen those changes. We're working on them. When we bring them forward, that's when you would be able to see them, and that would be when they become public and available to you and the public to review.
Would there be individual OCP amendments?
Correct. Yeah,
Formal
we'll come to
OCP
you.
amendments?
Like, and I don't know if you remember when we came with the zoning bylaws, we came with them all at once. We presented all those changes to all the zoning bylaws at once, and you voted on it, and I think there were some changes made, and we came back a second time, and then that was how it was done.
But how does it get fed in? How do I don't remember everything, so I need to go back, if I may.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
And I may go back and, okay, how did that conversation go? Okay, I'm gonna look for my OCP and expect to see those changes within there. Am I wrong? Or do I have to find the amending documents separately to understand the changes within the OCP for anything like Bill 44 and that work?
We'll do our best to, when we present the information to you, clearly identify what the changes are made in that OCP for all of the OCPs that require changing. We usually use a table to illustrate that, the existing wording and then how it's being changed and a rationale for that change. And we'll lay it out as clearly as we can. And just a side note, because of the many OCPs and zoning bylaws, it can be quite lengthy. I think the table, when Dana brought that report forward for zoning, was 80 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
But you may do that in chunks at this point. We don't have the same time crunch. Dana had to do certain things by a certain time frame. We pulled a few of them for additional review, but you met the time frames. Now you would you not be able to say, well, for these 3 electoral areas, here were the zoning changes that were made, and now here's the resulting OCP amendments. You don't have to do all of us at one time, do you? You could chunk it out.
If that's your preference, Chair, we could do that. Our plan was to bring them all at once, and what we did with the zoning, I believe we have to the end of the year. And the changes are going to be nowhere near as substantive for the zoning as they will be
For the OCPs.
for the OCPs as they will for the zoning. So if there's additional direction of how you want that presented, please tell me.
I think we'd leave it to your discretion, but it was so much last time that it may be an advantage
It was,
to
Chair,
piece
you're right.
it out.
You're right, it was a lot, and we were under a time crunch, and it was huge. And then part of the vastness of that is, again, because we have so many, instead of just in a municipality, we might only have one zoning bylaw. Here we have several, multiple.
Go ahead, Director Vandenberg, then we'll go into the.
I just want to go back in time just a wee bit, and it's to the flood hazard policy and regulations review slide. And under budget sources, you've got the project budget, you've got budget sources suggesting grant funding, but many times I see the verbiage in-kind contribution for RDCK project management costs. So there's no value there.
No,
So two
quantified.
questions.
There is value, public value,
Not
but there's
there.
there's no quantity of dollars.
So my question is this in kind already built into our approved budget? Or is this then going to be additional, coming back to us to amend that value of in kind? Because in kind is an open check, and it would be nice to know, can you describe that for me?
Chair Jacqueline, it's already approved in our current budget.
Within the budget, but I think senior management team is working on trying to show us that like out of an allocation of so many hundreds of $1,000s of staff time and benefits,
Yeah,
it would be nice to know that
yeah, how do you measure?
$32,000 is
Yes.
what became the in-kind contribution to support this $1.2 million grant.
Thank you.
And I think that's underway. That's senior management discussion. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And Chair Watson, did you want to sort of on that first chunk of in-stream, did you want to elaborate on any of it now? Or wait until we go through the, how did you word it? The paused or not yet started category?
I'll just say that every project that has been put forward, that is the ones we just reviewed to the ones that are near term, have all had the same process of a motion from the board directing action. The timeline on how those are being actioned varies depending on staff preference, and I will address that later on. Thank you.
Okay, no, fair enough. I don't see anyone else. I'm trying to pay attention. We'll go back to the remaining project items. That's tongue in cheek. This isn't, you're not going to list all the stuff that you have to go, but these are the key ones, I guess. Is it?
Yeah, Chair, back in September when the board approved those near-term items, we identified at that time as well those other ones that we would be working with the directors on, understanding what the priority is for those remaining items, and also whether we would be doing things differently, and in doing the work differently, find some efficiencies, which might actually change then what those projects look like. So let's start with the first one would be Area J, OCP review. So back when we started the Sentinel Mountain OCP review, that was joint. It was prior to this new one, I and J were one OCP. Decision was made to split them, and I is now adopted. So J would be the oldest, I believe, OCP that hasn't been done, and so that's a project that could be initiated. Like all these ones that you're going to look at, you'll see this note. It could begin following the completion of the area OCP, but it's part of the ongoing work plan prioritization discussion with you folks and the board. And then, so now I'm just going to recap some of the ones where we got to on them. So these are all projects that were, with the exception of the campground bylaw, approved by the board, or the board is given us direction to work on them. So Area H North OCP review. This, like you're going to see for areas D and E, this was initiated to have discussions with the residents, understanding what their needs are and how land use planning could address some of their concerns. And more specifically, in areas that didn't have zoning, if zoning was desired. And so a few years ago, we had some public meetings in New Denver and Hills. It was right at the close of the pandemic. And folks came out and we had a really good chat. And there was a lot of good discussion and interest in Area H North for zoning. And so they're waiting for us to come back and reactivate those discussions and possibly do an OCP review and possibly zoning to implement. This goes back even longer. This was the Playmore Junction zoning bylaw. This was initiated in response to a petition from residents who were wanting zoning in the Playmore Junction area. And so the board directed us to explore that, but then paused it. And again, part of this ongoing discussion around the work plan is where this fits in terms of priority. Like Area H North, there was interest in discussing land use planning and how it could address some of the needs in Area D. And so then a resolution was passed in 2022 to build on this work and consider then zoning in some of these areas that are wanting it. And so that's, you'll see the specific communities listed within that resolution. Same in Area E, we had these discussions with mostly online with folks, and through survey work, this is how we engaged the public in all three of these, the Area H North, D, and E. These were all done with a combination of engagement activities, both to convey what land use planning is and how it can be effective in addressing their concerns, and then listening from the residents is what do you need and how would this help you, or is this not helpful? And so there's more to come in Area E as well, to discuss possible zoning in places that are asking for it. This next one, the Housing Development Costing Study. So this was a resolution that came from the board. I'm forgetting the year, but anyways, it was in response to the urgent need for non-market housing. The board directed staff to develop cost assessment and study identifying land development requirements and suitable RECK-owned land that could be acquired, converted, or disposed of for housing purposes.
So Nelson, we have a question on the Area D project. Chair Watson, if you want to go ahead, we'll just try and keep these as we run through them. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I feel a little frustrated because I'm going to repeat myself after years of repeating myself, but I'm going to say it again. The first thing I want to know with the Area D community planning is it did not start in 2022. It started in 2018 at the latest. That was after 2 years of being told that I had it in my work plan, and then all of a sudden I needed a motion. That motion was in 2020, and then the actual work and the completion of the initial work to identify the communities out of 24 that had requested that work was in 2022. So I first want to note that when we're identifying the dates of a project and when it started, it's really haphazard how that's happening. Floodplain was 2018, whereas the motion was after that. So how we're determining the information to provide to directors and the public on when things started, I have a concern with. Number two, to indicate that further board direction is required to prioritize this work within the planning services work plan is the most frustrating thing to hear when the motion that was put in place for this work is the same process that was applied to everything else that has taken action, that has moved forward, and some of those things have come after that motion. So how this is being determined is really, really frustrating. I almost want to give up on this whole process. Part of my frustration is that I'm physically watching the complete degradation of land in unzoned areas where they were supposed to be active transit routes, where they were supposed to be residential routes, where they're imposing serious environmental damage. We have no control on those. Subdivision, ALR, all these things without zoning means we're just an administrative body with no voice. So this is hugely concerning to me. I have a few other notes on this specific one. I want to note that the Complete Communities project, the DPA project, have all jumped the queue on these, and I supported those. The Complete Communities one I supported because it was supposed to provide information that would support this work. It has not done that. The DPA work, I said from the moment that it came to us that I would not be approving any changes to my OCP based on the need for this zoning work, and that came from my residents. And then there was still confusion and serious backlash at the KLP table when they thought I was deciding not to do DPAs at all. So there's communication issues there. So I'm going to stop there, but I have more comments after on this whole process of a year of talking about things where we're landing in the exact same spot we were before. And the one note I'll make is there is no reference to the population density and the geography of our area to denote the reason why we cannot be a municipal way of approaching planning. But when we get to the end and the request from staff on whatever it is to go where next, I'll comment then. But currently, I don't feel like we've moved a needle at all. And this is very, very challenging when I have to go back to residents and say, sorry, we're still not able to address your needs. Well, we're trying to address all these other things that zoning would address. Thank you.
Mostly as a comment, I think, unless you want to, we can wait, I guess, on the overall priority thing, or did you have something to add right now or respond, Nelson?
Well, just that, this prioritization work is ongoing, and this is the direction we need from the board.
Okay. So I have in the room Director Vandenberg, online Director Grant. Go ahead, Vandenberg.
Great, thank you. And my question is on the housing development and costing study. The non-market housing work. What's the timeline on that? Like, where are we, and where's it going?
So in this category, this is projects that are not started or paused. This this would be in the not started category.
And supplemental?
Yes, go ahead.
Do we have a time barrier that we have to have this done by? Is this a provincial requirement?
No, this request came from a board resolution.
Thank you.
Director Graham.
Thank you. So through the chair, regarding the Area E community planning slide, I just heard Manager White state that there are residents asking for zoning. So I don't remember in the survey regarding planning that question was asked. So for us to now say publicly that we have residents asking for zoning, if I recall, the study was asking for planning. And I also want to make a note here that for Area E, given that we have part of Area E that doesn't even have an OCP, and one of my goals as a director has been trying to get my community more together, as in working in silos. And given that the fact that my OCP is actually overdue, according to what is written in it, that says it should be reviewed every 5 to 10 years. Now it's I think 12 years old, I guess, 11, 12. So it's due for, and my view would be to have this project go together with a complete OCP review and find out if the other part of Area E wants now to have an OCP, and if there is a desire for zoning, I would like to do that all at one time and not to have this siloed, even though this approach was started before I was around. But those were just my comments. Thank you.
Thoughts on that, Nelson?
Sure, thank you, Chair. I'll just kind of recap some of what I said, and because it relates to Area H, North, D, and E. In all these areas, the requests, what we were hearing was interest in understanding more about what land use planning tools are available, if those are useful in addressing the concerns some of the residents had or not. And while it's true, we heard a range of responses to that. In all three areas, there was interest in zoning. Not unanimous, though. In some areas, it was the opposite. Do not zone us. So we heard both. But for those residents who are really needing it or wanting it, we saw there's merit in going back to them to understand just where zoning could be useful and is desired. So that's work that we really don't have good answers to that question. And that's why all three of these projects would undertake seeking answers to those questions. And you would do so, I think the point about reviewing the OCP at the same time. It would be reviewing the OCP and then addressing, okay, do we also want to implement that OCP by applying zoning here as well?
So before going back to Director Cram, your most up-to-date information would be the outcome of the Planning 101 exercise? And is that a document that everybody's looked at again recently?
It's probably not recently. It's been a number of years now since we did survey work in all three of those areas. So, I mean, the engagement would involve in-person in the case of Area H North, virtual in D and E, and a lot of survey work with the residents as well.
So because I'm fuzzy on, I got a general idea, so I'd like to see that again. I could find it, but you guys would find it faster. Supplemental, Director Graham, did you have follow-up?
My only supplemental comment was that I didn't feel that the process for Area E that was virtual, and it had to be at the time of pandemic, really encapsulated the residents, because we have such a high percentage of seniors who couldn't even figure out how to work a Zoom meeting. So I kind of take those findings and the results of that study with a bit of a grain of salt. Thank you.
Thanks, understood. So back to Watson, and then I'm just looking, I don't see anyone else. Please go ahead, Chair Watson.
Yeah, I just want to clarify the Area D process was quite comprehensive, even though it was online. We had probably the most well-attended meetings, and it gave me a really clear direction. And that's why the motion, again, was put in place in 2022, 3 years after we had started that process, to indicate the communities that do very much want zoning. Now, those communities are already being impacted and already changing. So I want to be really clear. Area D's work was really clear about what they wanted done. And that's what they're waiting for. The Castle Corridor is the most impacted at this time. The other one, which is a question, why are we being asked to prioritize some of this work as though the motion itself doesn't stand, and then other work goes ahead? Again, DPA, complete communities, those were just motions from the board, same process as this. So what is the note on further board direction is required to prioritize this work? How are you determining some needs more than a motion and others just get a motion and then they move ahead?
Any comments on that?
I'm not quite sure how to answer, Chair. We're, as a group, examining the planning services work plan and understanding what the priorities are and if things need to change in terms of the sequence. That we're answering that question through the work we started a year ago through these workshops, was to understand those priorities. And certainly we could go by date order of resolutions. That's an option. But that's ultimately where we're going to get to, is a priority from you telling us what we need to work on next. If there's projects that we're working on, you want us to stop working on, that's fair as well. And put those projects that are most important up at the top. And of course, the other activity we're engaging in is we're recognizing a challenge in doing the work because of the complexity, the duplication of all these OCPs and zoning bylaws. Therefore, is there a better way of doing it? So all of these things are up for discussion. That's why we're here.
And I do accept you gave us a time, budget, and resources, set of options, consultants in-house or outsourcing, and the ramifications of that. We got a fixed budget right now. Before going, I see more speakers on a sort of general topic of scheduling and priority. Sangeeta, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think Nelson covered it, but we're also trying to understand how to approach the multiple OCPs in the region and having that discussion with you as to whether we start looking at things sub-regionally or, we have proposed another option, how those workshops to have those conversations. So the ultimate goal is to make our work plan a little bit more efficient and utilize staff time in an efficient way to deliver what you want.
Supplemental.
Go ahead, yes.
I'm going to be frank and say a year later in 2 workshops, we've given you a ton of information and we're still in the same spot we were a year ago. I do not understand what else you need from us. I will have recommendations to use LG CAP for this work to move it along. We need to be focusing on what's in front of us and not adding new. And I'm finding this so frustrating. We've put incredible amounts of hours and time into this work. And the report so far, what we got today, is the exact same thing we got a year ago when you asked us to prioritize. So what I'm seeing is staff want to see us change the way we're doing things. And that's possible, but we're delaying the very necessary work in front of us at this time. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Stuart for a second here, and then we have more speakers. One thing I think we might have to recognize, for me, there's a sub-regional conversation to be held here that hasn't been held, that might simplify part of this. I have 2 or 3 ideas that I haven't been able to share. Stuart, though, because we're not going to get it clear, do this today, same position we were last couple of times. So I don't want people to feel frustrated, but at least recognize the opportunity. If you have a sub-regional conversation to hold it. If you have a standalone thing, then we just got to be clear that how long it's been on the work list, and then those few items that are standalone, we just maybe have to recognize, yeah, they are a priority and be more clear.
Yes, sure. So through the chair, I just want to mention that the way that the planning resources are designed, I see them in sort of 3 categories. One is the OCP zoning process and updates. Second is the applications that you see on the RAC agenda that get processed on a daily basis. And then the third is the project stuff that Nelson went through at the beginning of the presentation. Now, those resources are how we've been moving forward the last decade or so. We do one OCP update at a time. If the Rural Affairs Committee and the board wanted to change the way that we're allocating those resources to say, no, we want you to do 2 OCP processes at once, then staff needs to know what falls behind. Does it take an extra 3 months for applications to get to the board because we've got fewer staff working on those day-to-day applications? Or do we pause the projects that come forward and not move forward on those special projects like the subdivision pilot, like the floodplain update, like the enforcement for the DPAs?
And the campground.
And the campground.
From 12 years ago.
Yeah, I don't think I was here when the campground bylaw was first discussed. But that is what we're looking for, because with the area IOCP moving forward the last year or so, nothing else has fallen behind from the OCP's perspective other than Area J, because we took an OCP that was 2 areas and then we pulled I out. So the Area J is probably the one area that could be completed now had we let the 2 of them together, but it was determined to pull Area I out. So we can definitely move forward on the OCP discussion based on the list that's there. I do have to look back, Director Graham, because I thought you had rescinded a number of your planning motions. So I'm not sure that Area E community planning item is even on the work plan anymore. So that's something we'll have to go back and double check. But that's the direction that we're looking for here. Is the only way to move these OCPs faster is to dedicate resources that are otherwise dedicated to other projects and accept the fact that something might be delayed or not done, or we contract it out and we can do 2 projects simultaneously. All of that being said, I don't think that ignores the fact that when looking at, say, the next Area J OCP review and Area H North OCP review, that we can't look at some way to say, okay, what parts of those OCPs might be similar at the top of that pile to say, you know what, the general commentary in those OCPs is very similar. So why go through an entire process of 2 years for one, just to get back to the beginning for the next one, and the first 4 months or the first 2 public hearings are all the same discussion. They're all talking about those grand statements about community benefit and what they're talking about, what they value as a community, because at some point they are similar. I agree that you might get down to community plans where there's some differing goals in terms of how they want their community to either grow, not grow, and where they want to use land for specific purposes. But there is a point where there's similarities across the board. And I think that that's the discussion that Nelson is trying to bring forward, is how can we at least make that first step efficient, even pulling from the most recent one for Area I and starting with that to say, okay, what can we use from the Area I OCP where we can not necessarily speed things along, but start the discussion at a level where the public is saying, yeah, I totally agree with that. Or I want this one little tweak, as opposed to starting to reinvent the wheel right from the beginning. And I think that that's where Nelson's coming from, was trying to use what we've done to move the work plan along.
Okay, thank you. So I have 3, I guess, maybe 4 speakers. How many more? Well, okay, have a second. How many more slides, Nelson?
4 more.
4, yeah, I've got that. Your rest of your presentation on other screens.
We're almost there, Ken.
So, I wouldn't say that. You're more optimistic. I call myself foolishly optimistic sometimes. I'm not going to say you're foolishly optimistic, but I'm looking for a break. Is what I'm looking for. So what I'm thinking is maybe we'll pop off Vandenberg, Cunningham, Watson. I think would want to wait. Maybe we'll have the 3 more speakers and we'll stand up and stretch our legs, come sit back down and run the rest of the slides, if that makes sense. So we'll go to pop off.
If I could just.
Oh, yes, okay, on this.
I just want to say one thing. I have not spoken to the what we heard report yet, but it is somewhat relevant. I was waiting to the last slide to speak to that, and I wonder if that also might be helpful to get to that point too, to head off some of the questions that I'm already hearing. So just to make that point too.
Oh, fair. And I knew there was another speaker. Apologies, Director Davidoff. I did note that. So if I pop off Vandenberg, Davidoff, Cunningham, Watson maybe later. And if people are for the second or third time on a particular topic, just give me a break, because tracking who's jumping in when is a little bit tough on this. So we will go to Popoff, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I can understand the frustration that Chair Watson has expressed. And some of us directors have the same frustration. And talking about Claymore Junction, I put a pause on that one, waiting until the Area I official community plan, because we've got the Boykin subdivision right next door to there. But the development is still happening there. Community is not happy with it, especially with the grinding of the rocks and everything that's happening down there. There's a big sand pile beside the South Buchanan Credit Union. And, you know, we're all frustrated. There should be a better way of going there and accommodating us directors that are frustrated with the whole process. When can we get the planning? The official community plan in the north was adopted in 2008. And shortly thereafter, I wanted to go into zoning. But other area directors wanted their official community plans reviewed that were prior to me. So we all stepped back trying to, be considerate with our fellow directors. So I see Director or Chair Watson is going to have a possible suggestion near the end of this presentation, and I'm willing to listen to that. So how can we all get what we want done in a timely fashion?
You can't always get what you want, but when you try sometimes, get what you need.
I should correct. How can we get what our residents insist us?
Yes.
On us achieving?
Mick Jagger's lyrics.
If I could just make a quick comment on that through the chair, is that I think Director Popoff, I think you've actually highlighted the problem with what you just stated, because you've got an Area H North OCP, and now you want a Playmore Junction OCP, and then is there something in between? So now you've taken 11 areas and you've made them 14. And it creates, so if you've got to have a whole process for the Area H North one, and then you do Playmore Junction separately, like you're waiting for 3 different OCPs in your area, and I think that we need to somehow connect that with the capacity that we've got in planning and the ability for staff to be able to do that. And if it's contracting out, that's still dollars spent. It's still, in the end, there's still going to be tax dollars. There might be, as Chair Watson mentioned, some discussion around LG cap, and that windfall's great, but to my knowledge, that money's not coming after 2027. When those funds are expected to be spent. So eventually it's going to be on the tax bill. If that is going to be done in a quicker fashion than Nelson had mentioned over the years. Yeah.
Just a quick response.
Okay, and then we'll go to a few of the speakers.
And then the quick response is, Playmore Junction is a response to a petition that was put forward by the residents. It's not at my direction that I want it.
No,
just a clarification.
And through the chair, this isn't about saying, geez, you shouldn't be doing it this way. You're the director for the area. You know your residents and what they desire, and if that's the way you want to proceed, that's fine. All I'm stating is that we need to make sure we're reconciling that with the capacity and the expectation on the planning department to be able to deliver that because of the amount of work they've got to do. And there's either got to be an understanding that there's a longer time frame, or it's funded to be done quicker. And that's really what it is, right? We can do anything if we've got enough money.
Thank you. Agreed.
So, Rolling Stones is still in my head. I like that song. I don't know why. Maybe because it's real. And this is kind of on this topic, and I realize at Vandenberg, Davidoff, Cunningham, I will defer Chair Watson. Director Vandenberg.
Thank you, through the chair. This is a conversation.
Sorry, Vandergraaf, did I miss you on speaking, or am I allowing too much latitude? I want to know.
Maybe both.
Okay, so, no, I want to hear this. We're a committee. We planned workshops for entire days and haven't got to a resolution. If I want to hear it, whether it's here or later, I want to hear it. If you think I can't share these or speaking too much or going over stuff, tell me here or later, because our committee, your committee, is your committee. I need to hear it. Or personally later, it's fine. I'm sorry if I'm calling out, but I need to also respect people's opportunity to speak to staff directly and have this input.
I've just found it difficult to get your attention.
And I apologize. I've tried to look. So if you've tried to speak, I very much apologize. I'd like to put you on the list in advance. Director Vandenberg, please go ahead.
So here's my concern, being the one with the oldest OCP. And I have to say that I'm willing to work and collaborate and do whatever needs to happen to make things go more quickly, but sometimes I'm a bit concerned that around this table, it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. And so that's why I've started to squeak now, because I do have the oldest OCP. It does need some attention. I'm not, not getting petitions going or anything like that, and I'm not saying that you did. But I am saying that there has to be some sort of an orderly, prioritized process for this. And I'm also saying that I'm willing to look at other ways of doing things to speed the process up. Because, you heard me say it before, what we're doing now doesn't really serve anyone well. That's what I have to say.
So you would have the option, now or later, to say that you want to move that staff begin OCP review for Area J in 2025 with a target for completion by December 2026. You could use that kind of language if you wish. Get staff's response on capacity and implications of that, see if the committee supports it, and we go to board. And I don't think that's the best way to do things necessarily,
So either.
but that's always an option. And I'm afraid we will be hearing that by the end of this month from someone.
So supplemental to that, we've had workshops, we've talked about other ways of doing things. And yet what I'm hearing is, well, we'll look at that later. I want to get mine done first, kind of thing. Or, I'm in the queue. I want to stay in the queue and move my stuff forward, which may serve the person saying that well, even if I'm the one saying it, but it doesn't serve the group well. And to me, that's a different and larger concern. Because if I say, well, slam the table, which I do sometimes, and say, I'm next in line, I want to move forward, I've had enough of this, it's my turn. That doesn't help anyone else. It may help me marginally, and the people in Area J, but it doesn't help us as an organization move forward and do things in a way that covers what needs to happen but does it more efficiently. And I really do think that, sometimes plagiarism is a really wonderful thing. And so if you've got language that's working, why would, I don't have any personal ownership over, the words on an OCP. If someone else has something that says it beautifully, I'm happy to take that and put Area J on it. I just really, I'm a bit frustrated that we've been talking about this sort of as long as I've been at this table, which is over 2 years now, and yet there doesn't appear to be any change in sight.
So I appreciate that very much. I'll say your thoughts are fairly well aligned with mine. I'm looking for the efficiencies. I want to retreat to another table with a subset of colleagues and staff and maybe see if there's an efficiency. If there isn't, then we'll just come back to the somewhat chaotic approach. So I do appreciate, I'm going to apologize again for not acknowledging you earlier.
That's okay.
And
you're not as perfect as you sometimes
nobody's near perfect. I strive for the 95% rule that if I'm close to being on target, it's good enough, let's move on. So yeah, and I think the value of your stating what you just stated that way is something we all need to hear. I will return to a speakers list and then see if we can get up and have that stretch because it's still Vandenberg, David Off, Cunningham.
Great, thank you through the chair. reinforce, actually build on Director Hennegraaff a little bit and reinforce some key terms I'm hearing here, but I'm just going to go back to exercise today, and I do want to get through the rest of these because I'm making notes and so on. I am committed to helping in my way. I'm not just waiting for you to do it. I'm ready to move forward and assist. The sub-regional comment mechanism, conversations, that I see as being productive. But what we have, you started off saying you're wanting us to help you prioritize this. Okay, but there's no mechanism described. How are we going to do it? We're going to go and put it up on the board and everybody decide we're going to rate it and that sort of thing. Is that how you're wanting this to be done? Do you want us to come individually and, as Henny has said, the squeakiest wheel gets the grease type of an approach? I don't think that's where we want to go. Yep. I want to capture, so sub-regional conversation is, I see, a proactive way forward for some of us. I do want to key in on Stuart's comment, use what we've already done. Okay, so to me that means foundation. Okay, there's a common foundation here that can help speed a lot of this stuff up. And I will go back to previous workshops, and I use the term, I think in terms of ASP, Area Structure Plan, LASP, Local Area Structure Plan, because those are the cultural and unique differences that each of our communities have that layer over layer our foundation piece, the OCP. And so I just want to throw that out there again, because I said it before and I see value in it. As to us getting to where we want to get to, and to Director Watson's point, Chair Watson's point, when is this thing going to evolve itself? When is this thing going to happen? And so that I will leave at that, but what is our mechanism today? What are we trying, what is our outcome today? Is it just collecting all this information again and go away and then we forget, what the heck was that about again? And so I want to move the needle forward. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you guys are just getting ahead of me, is all. I had intended to talk about that in this presentation, which I haven't quite got to the end of, but we have some suggestions of how to do that.
Okay, so two very patient speakers that like to give some time for their thoughts, then we're going to get up and stretch our legs and go back to the others. So we do have Davidoff and Cunningham, Director Davidoff, for the first time for quite a while, at least on this block, and so I hope you don't see I let a lot of speakers ahead of you from when I first saw you fly. Go ahead, Director Davidoff.
Nothing to worry about, Chair Jackman. Patience is an operative word when it comes to what we're dealing with right now. When I ran 14 years ago, one of the planks in my platform was Area I OCP review. And at that time, I worked really hard with staff and, how do we move this forward? I was told that G was in the queue and I was next because we lost one where Director Hennegraaff's plan and our plan are exactly the same age, 1996. I said, thank you. And then I waited. And bottom line is I didn't force anything. I just want to correct something that I heard from the CAO. Area I did not pull out of the INJ OCP. The Area J director of the day and I both agreed that we wanted our own OCPs for a whole bunch of reasons. And then I waited and the G got done. I went into the queue in 2016. And I just want to say lessons learned. It's patience, but we can also, when we did the 96 OCP, we did zoning at the same time. And we heard from Vancouver Island folks, from Comox, it was the Cowichan, excuse me, that basically they did zoning and the other aspirational objectives and statements at the same time, because now staff is doing more work implementing our aspirational goals and guidelines that took from 2016 to now to complete. So I think doing both at the same time is something important. That's my personal, not just my personal, there's another RD that said the same thing. But at the end of the day, we're still not done. And yeah, we need to look at efficiencies. And I was told that, believe it or not, we built on Area G's work. And hopefully Area J can build on Area I's and G's work, the most recent ones. And I think we're getting to the point where we've got a pretty polished product with the current staff that we have. I think J's is doable within a year and a half or 2 years. I really believe it can be done. So I'm just going to stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Director. And with that segue to Area G Director Cunningham, and then we'll stretch our
Thank you. Yeah, as the previous director mentioned, I was in the queue right before him in the space between finishing Area G's in 2018, by the way. But now, shows you a lot of this. As a matter of fact, I've been with the board on 40 years now, and I can think of projects that have probably been in the queue, including Area G, for almost 30 of those 40 years. And the problem is greater than we all think, because when I first started with the district, nobody wanted to get into planning because we're against zoning. That was it, almost everywhere. You look to people advertising property unzoned, so you can do whatever you like with it. You can mess around with it, and your neighbors and cares. These things change as we get more people in an area, and the concentration changes. And all of a sudden people say, oh, well, listen, I don't want him doing that, and I want. So we do. But the big thing is, firstly, of course, you need the OCP, and we have areas that don't have them. So I think that's an absolute priority. Secondly, as the people are ready, we definitely need zoning, because that's the other thing that is necessary and able to go with what's happening in the world nowadays. But the big thing is getting the people in line. And most are in favor of an OCP. I don't know anybody who really isn't when you start talking about it. Now, getting down, now how do you get there? That's very full of long speech, but okay, now how do you get there? The fact is, every time, we said, we review the OCP in 5 years. That's never happened in 30 years that I've been in this district. Not ever once. Because what happens, with staff is that we don't have enough staff, basically. And we have too many jobs. And we've got to think a way of either shortening the number of jobs or increasing the number of staff. Perhaps, as was mentioned, by contracting out so we get all the OCPs in. Because once that's done, then moving to the next step, which is, of course, zoning, becomes much easier and much lower stress. But what happens, of course, as we all know, staff starts something, and then the province comes in and says, well, listen, you've got to change all your zoning bylaws, all your OCPs now to permit 2 houses on each property. So here we are. Staff is busy doing all that. And something else will happen down the line, and then something else and something else. And that's what happens. And it doesn't matter how many staff you have, I'm sure it will be overdriven sooner or later. So I guess the priority then is we should set the big priorities and absolutely stick to them and dedicate staff to them, whether that be contracted staff or our staff, and get these OCPs done. Perhaps, and I'm perhaps moving a step further than I should. Start with the oldest first, but the question is, the one on the list the longest, I'm just suggesting, and believe me, I'm not the last to speak, I know the chair. But that said, or do we move to the ones who don't have an OCP first? Or maybe we divide them into 2 queues. One, the no OCP people, and we'll get somebody working on that, and the pros, and the other, the OCP review people. Rather than the news and I like the idea of being able to put the ideas together, because most OCPs have a whole pile of things in common. And when you go to a public meeting on it, you say, well, I guess we all want to keep our 20-acre minimum property here. Yeah, anybody who doesn't, no, and you can move through the checklist really quite quickly in a public meeting and get the thing underway. But let's now talk about the funding, Chair. Yeah, what are we going to do about the thing? Because every time we talk about getting more staff or contracting out, our taxes are going to go up. Well, what are we going to do about it? We either let the taxes go up and keep staying behind, or keep the taxes where they are and keep staying behind, or fall farther back all the time, or we actually do swallow the bullet, apply for the big grants as has, use the monies as fast and quickly and as most efficiently as we can, and get the job done. And I quite frankly, would say a little about it. Thank you.
Thanks. I do want to entertain Director Hanegraaff before I stretch our legs. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, being the one that's next in line, I'm going to say that, sometimes you have to give up your seat on the bus. And so if there's something going on that's really problematic and needs the planning department's attention, I think that, as the one that's first in line or the one that's sitting on the bus, I'll stand and let someone else sit. If it's a priority, we have to, the thing with setting priorities is you have to be willing to change your priorities as the need arises. And so I just want to say, for me personally, if there's a greater need somewhere else, to have some work done by the planning department, I'm okay with that.
So we're going to stretch. We could go away with thoughts like, we might only ask staff to structure the work plan basically around 40% staff time on resources, staff work on applications, 40% on OCP and zoning, and 20% on projects or problematic. That's the kind of direction we could ask staff to restructure the work plan around and see where it lands, as opposed to the I'm first, I'm second, I'm third. But let's have a break. Let's make it, this is 10:37, it's 10:45, okay, 8 minutes. We'll stretch a little bit and see the last couple slides.
Right? Oh, no, right. It's Nick Carter from NSYNC. That's who it is.
Please, okay, there's a little bit of chatter in the room, but okay, we're back. We're back in session. If everybody could please take their seats again. I see online everybody is turning cameras back on, getting back to business. So Nelson has the other half of his slides. So this next hour, the next few minutes, what's going to work best here, Nelson? We've had a lot of questions and interaction, sort of piece by piece. You want to maybe run the rest of your slides, and I'll just start a blank page and develop new speakers list for afterwards. And I already have Chair Watson on that list.
Yeah, Chair Jackman, my intention was to just help the discussion by recapping, where all the projects we've been working on over the past year, and also just a reminder of what those other projects are that have been either not started or just put on pause for a bit. So we're almost done that, and then we'll get to what we heard report. So again, remaining items or paused items, this is in the paused category. So the EPA work allowed prudently. Excuse me, actually predated my time joining the RECK 6 years ago, and came out of discussions at the partnership table where there's a desire to ensure good rigor in the application of the development permit tool to protect the natural environment. And so that work was done, took us a little longer. I think we started in 2020, and it took 3 years to get to a point where it's kind of at the 1 yard line. So this work is done and could be implemented, but there was a desire to pause it for the time being. So that's where that one is at. And can be initiated as desired by the directors when they undertake OCP amendments in their areas, is where we landed on that. Campground bylaw predates me, but this was initiated, I think, to address those shared interest ownership parcels and particularly in unzoned areas and the concern around health and safety issues when they are unregulated. And the last one, this is on the paused category. So this was our ag policy review, wherein we were looking at changes around policies in agricultural areas, and the focus being to preserve lands for farming, to prioritize that, but also address the changes that the province made around second residences and other changes, and what was desired in our different electoral areas. The work was done in A, B, and C in fall 2023. FIJMK in July 2023, and I don't know if those dates are right, but anyways, those areas are done, is the point. And D, E, G, and H are not done. So we have changes to be made in those areas, but the work was paused while we, I think mainly to deal with some of the things coming from the province, really was why we probably put that on pause, and the other needs of other electoral areas. So that is one we could reactivate at any point as well.
So just going to note that I have 3 speakers, Watson, Cunningham, Vandenberg right now, but we're just going to go through this next slide and let Nelson summarize it.
Okay, so what's next steps? I guess here's where I talk a bit about the what we heard report and speak to a point that Director Watson made around not making progress. I think we have made progress, but it definitely is maybe slower than we all want. The work to discuss how we do things is a big job, because we've been doing things here in a certain way for a number of years. So to discuss changes to that takes time to work through if we want to make changes to how we do provide planning services to our region. And that has required the discussions that we had through the workshops in February and December, and then to digest what we heard. And I think the short answer is what we heard is very nuanced, and there isn't consensus. Or it's not clear what that consensus looks like 100%. And so that's why more direction, I think, is needed, more discussion is needed, and ways of help you make these decisions is where we're at today. So in the What We Heard report, I think the key thing to highlight there is we can take one of 2 different approaches. One is look at ways of really aligning our OCPs and zoning bylaws, or option 2 is we continue doing what we're doing, but with more incremental changes to how we do things. And that's But again, there's a lot of detail in that, what we heard report for you to digest and reflect back to us. Did we hear you correctly? And are there changes or things you'd like us to know that we didn't capture well in that report? Next step is how you make that decision. And one of the things that we thought might be useful is, again, you can choose today to make those decisions in terms of prioritizing the work plan items, pulling off things that you don't want us to do that are on that work plan, changing how the things that we are actively working on to maybe put those on, to stop those and do other things. It's all available to you to make those decisions how you want. We thought one approach could be survey work that we've drafted some surveys that we could share with the directors to work through some of these things, and then we bring that back and we show what everybody voted on in terms of the surveys and where we are seeing some consensus in order to help us make this decision. So that's the one thing I would offer could be helpful here, but it's up to you if you want to dive into it. That discussion of how to prioritize these, now could be the time to do that. One last point I would make is the urgency. We are fully engaged with the work plan items that we showed in the near-term projects. And so there isn't, from that perspective, urgency in making that decision around whether we do things differently or not. But I understand there's urgency in other ways, as Director Watson talked about, in terms of the pressure that she's feeling from residents to address some of the things on the work plan, and we appreciate that. Hence why this is challenging work for us to do collectively, and we're here to help. And I think that I'll leave it there and then go to any questions, Chair Jackman, that the directors might have.
Okay, thanks. So I have Watson, Cunningham, Vandenberg. I'll seek a clarification on what you just said, and I don't see anybody else right now. Chair Watson, you're up. Floor is yours.
Yeah, sorry, I was writing notes. I don't want to be further engaged. In all honesty, we need to recognize we don't have the same baseline. Thus, we do not have consensus opportunities. We all have different needs. Where we can align has been identified. Creston, A, B, and C, want to talk sub-regional. Awesome. Jay's ready to roll. Awesome. There's ways that we have definitely articulated. It's just not as simplifying. It's just not as simple, as what I feel staff is seeking to be able to move forward on. And this is where I'm like, stop asking us. We've given so much input. A couple of notes on those inputs are the ones I've said. I did want to do sub-regional planning many years ago. Castle doesn't have the capacity. We didn't respond to it. So I'm left where I'm at. I don't have a problem with where it makes sense to look at harmonizing, but we cannot, as our size of regional district, align everything. I agree with Stuart. We have some baseline things we can use, standard OCP template. That is kind of what we all have, and then take it to the community for those differences where needed. I feel like we've given so much direction on how to move forward that please don't send me a survey, because repeating myself over and over again, we know what that definition is. What I would like to highlight, one side note, Cowichan Valley Regional District, where we had that presentation on harmonization, we spoke with them at the EA Forum. Harmonization is working terrible for them. There are serious issues, and they highly do not recommend it. And they're a much smaller regional district where population density makes sense to harmonize. So in the What We Heard report, which I read, I do want to note, I don't think you heard the note on our geography and the vast differences we have. You have a dam, a Columbia River Treaty Dam. You have people who are 100 to 200 kilometers away from any central servicing. Cowichan Valley is not like that. So I just can't repeat myself again and again. So I feel like we've given you lots. There's lots of sub-regional options. There's areas where you can use a template, and likely it'll be smaller needs to make changes because it's smaller regions. You don't have 24 communities to work with. What I did want to propose, which is a really poorly worded motion, LG CAP is at the board. And that's where I'm a little unsure of how to process this. But number one, what we heard through budget, we have too much going on. And what we've done with LG CAP is we said, let's do a bunch of new things. And that was because the climate change project said, what do you want to do? Let's do new things. I feel like we were inappropriate to not say, let's deal with our core servicing that needs addressing. And that's what I feel like I just can't not stop saying. I propose that LG CAP, we have $260,000 roughly to be allocated. Emergency services under EDMA, we're desperately going to need money in that area. Focus half of it on mitigation, half of it on the planning needs that are our core services that need to be addressed, where environmental degradation is occurring, where communities have said, please, we need to have some regulation in place to stop what's occurring and address those areas that have said, hey, we're on the list. We've been on the list for a while. So, Chair Jackman, I'm sorry. I'm very inarticulate today. I did send a motion to Stuart, which I don't blame him if he can't quite figure out what I'm trying to say. But that would be what I'd be proposing. Either I raise it tomorrow under LG CAP, or it comes as a recommendation from this table that then we have to explain to our municipal directors why we're suggesting we address core issues that are outdated.
So you're not making a recommendation right now. I'm just going to say it might be unfair. I have an LG CAP recommendation for tomorrow. It's on my scribble notes for tomorrow, and I'm not going to talk about it today. But I know it involves all 11 and a few municipalities, villages. So what I'm asking Chair Watson is, do you think it's fair to make a recommendation, you yourself? Do you think you can make any recommendation you like for a committee, we can vote it up or vote it down. Is it fair to make a recommendation at LG CAP here, or we do it tomorrow as a full conversation where everybody can hear what we're thinking?
I would first state that I think LG CAP should have been at rule to begin with, because municipalities do get LG CAP as well. And the municipalities, it's really hard to explain what our planning context is for them. We barely grasp it. So, but that is not where it's at. It is at the board, and it's been at the board. So as the chair and as process goes, I will make a motion tomorrow. But that, for my rural colleagues, I want you to know that any one-off projects that could be supported that are based on our core needs that have been clearly identified for years, that is what I would propose half of the LG CAP funding goes to, and that we are not looking at new things. We should not be looking at anything new until that work plan is back to manageable. So no, I'm not making a motion, but that's my rationale.
Okay, thank you, understood. So we have Cunningham, Vandenberg, maybe unless somebody else jumps in there.
Thank you.
Cunningham.
The clock, so we've got to keep talking.
Yep.
And that's right. Okay, now I appreciate what the previous speaker said, because she's absolutely right. When we talk about that program, it should have been in here at Rural Affairs, and we should have been able to use it to decide to do what we're trying to do right now. But I think that just getting 50% of it, or whatever it is the wrong way to do it. And the reason I say that is because 50% isn't going to do it. And at the end of the time, what are you going to do? So what I would like to suggest, and I'm always making suggestions at this point in time, is that instead we look at the job that needs to be done and prioritize the job that needs to be done, which is part of what the previous speaker said, but also then figure out a way of getting it done. And I'm going to suggest now those kinds of things. Number one, the non-OCP people need OCPs. The whole district should have OCPs. And I think that the sooner we get all the OCP things done, the better off we are. That's number one in my mind. Then number two, perhaps, and with a much smaller group, we can do the upgrades to OCPs. Okay, but the new ones have to be done. And like I said, the whole district probably has to be done area by area, because if there's any part of your area that doesn't have OCPs, it's going to need an OCP sooner or later. So if you have one OCP for area D, I hate this, or one for area H, it probably would be really good, because if it's all done together, it's we're all in this, and this is what we need to do. And it's because OCPs are what the communities want. I think usually it's very little difficulty in getting it through. And as we mentioned, there's a basic bucket list, what people want in their OCPs, but maybe 4 or 5 specialties for certain areas. It's really quite easy to do. And if we can't do it ourselves, maybe because of staffing, maybe we do need to contract out. But let's get on it and set a budget for that part. Give the OCPs, number 2, and reviewing your present OCPs and updating them. I think it's the second priority, but that we haven't been able to handle that now, even though we're 48 years behind. Well, maybe that's not it. But if we're ever going to get there, and what was said about pausing future projects, sometimes you can't. When the province says, we need you to do this, well, then we're stuck with doing that. And staff is diverted from all the other things that we wanted to do for the last 18 years or 20 years to doing what the province wants. Wouldn't it be nice if we were able to say the last half a dozen things that the province has said? Well, we'll put you on the list and take care of you in 18 years. So, and then after that, I think of course, the project work that we're doing, let's hold it as much as we can. And I don't mind going through and doing questionnaires on how the project works, or how it should be organized. That's a total different thing. I'm worried about OCPs and OCP updates.
Thank you. Director Vandenberg.
I guess thank you to the chair. The only comment I would make is I'm not against the survey. I'm against surveys in general because they never offer context. And maybe it's difficult to, so therefore you do a survey, you send it back, but you don't have that exploratory conversation that goes along with that thought process because it never has context. That's it.
So I have Chair Watson, and I'm labeling it, I guess, the second time in this conversation. I'm going to jump in a little bit. First, just clarification, Nelson, when you talk about survey work, you mean only surveying directors and staff, or outward facing to any portion of the public? You mean only talking to us through a survey?
It's just for directors in helping work through the prioritization process.
Okay, and so then what I'm going to say is what I said a little while ago, but I have so many notes on so many things right now, I have to find another sheet. But, I think to understand one what if case is, I'm not going to make this recommendation, but what if you said you're going to structure the 2025-2026 work plan based on 40% of all staff time on applications, 40% of all staff time on OCP and zoning, and 20% of the time either on projects, or you will keep coming back to us and asking us for reprioritizing what's new. I forget Director Handegraaff's words, but I liked it. She's problematic. What's problematic? So I'd love to see that kind of thing. And I know you've done it with consultants for all the OCPs over 20 years. I can't handle that. I can't talk to people about what's going to happen in 20 years. I probably won't be in the planet in 20 years, to be honest. But I'd like to see 2025, 2026. What if you put 40% of your current staff allocation? How far do you think you get on typical application volume? Would you say ahead? Typical OCP planning volume or OCP and zoning volume? How many projects would you get done? Just spitballing an idea there. We'll go back to Chair Watson again. And
Weatherhead.
Sorry?
Weatherhead.
Sorry, we'll go to Weatherhead first, please. Go ahead, Teresa.
Thank you, through the chair. I just noted that on this discussion on LG cap, as municipalities do have their own, is there a way to make a motion at this table to, perhaps address some of the discussion on the LG cap that then we could discuss the motion being put forward to tomorrow? I'm just asking on process.
So I guess my thoughts are, and I kind of open this up to Chair Watson, I'm not going to stop you from making a motion. I will ask our parliamentarian motion is out of order or not for the scope of this committee. And if Stuart has nothing much to say, then we're going to go ahead and vote on something. So you kind of have to put forward your idea and we'll go through those steps. If you want to make a recommendation on LG Cap, which is a board agenda item for tomorrow.
Thank you. I think that I would want to refer this to Chair Watson to see if that would be her desire, because it was based on what she is discussing.
But I think your wording of your proposed recommendation is also important if we're going to assess whether or not, based on our parliamentarian, that's why you're sitting here, Stuart, whether or not it's in scope of this committee. I'm going to be a little...
Yes, it would just be a motion to discuss LG Cap possibilities toward planning services. Core services, sorry.
If you put it in today's agenda, with the agenda structured, it would come up after a conversation on LG Cap anyway. So you can do that, I guess. Well, Stuart.
No, that's right. Maybe I wasn't clear. We don't have a discussion on LG Cap in this agenda today. So what I was meaning was having this discussion in rural affairs today prior to the board tomorrow, just because there may be, very pointed discussions in terms of planning that do pertain to rural affairs more so than to the board. I don't know.
You can make a recommendation to the board. I would ask Stuart again if it's in scope of this committee. In theory, we can make a recommendation to the board in terms of allocation of resources to do our work, our committee's work, planning work.
Okay.
I think we can do that. Maybe the wording would be important, and that would come up on the agenda automatically. We have that privilege. Anything we recommend to the board shows up the next day. That's a nice privilege to have. And that conversation be held after the LG Cap item on the agenda. So I guess we could ask the board to postpone that discussion too. Few options, Sarah. Yes, Stuart?
But through the chair, I think that the only way that a motion on LG Cap would be ruled out of order is if you're using information in the board report that's presented tomorrow to inform that motion. If it's a direction to staff to look at how LG Cap funding could be used to support planning work, I think that's totally within the scope of this committee and the scope of the discussion that you're having now. You're talking about how you're going to fund the priority of the work plan. If you're taking the motion from tomorrow to say 60% of LG Cap fund is going toward climate action ideas, and you're making a motion to say 60% of LG Cap funding should be going to planning, I would say that that's probably out of order. That's taking information from an agenda that's not the RAC agenda today and informing a motion. But you could make something that's more generic. And again, to Chair Jackman's point, because of the item coming from RAC being later on the agenda, you could move to postpone the LG Cap discussion until after the Rural Affairs Committee items are considered tomorrow before you get into the detail of that LG Cap report.
Got it.
Director Weatherhead. Courage. Director Weatherhead.
I will think on this for a moment. Okay.
Okay, so I do have Chair Watson back on, so I'll put you on for a second time. Chair Watson, maybe you can lend some clarity to this or not? Go ahead.
Well, I put my name on for a different reason, but I'll just reference that I really appreciate that clarification from Stuart. I will admit at agenda prep, I was really struggling with, I wanted this at RAC so we could do this, but we have to go with the way it's been going, and LG Cap has been at the board. So, and my power's flickering. That I respect that, and I think that it's, I would have no problem. It makes sense to say that if we wanted to say at this table, we want a portion of LG Cap to address the planning needs, then that makes sense because we're not being specific. I was getting into the numbers so that we can articulate better tomorrow. So I think that's a possibility, and that is trying to respect the whole process. What I asked to get on the list to say was that Director Cunningham mentioned something that was also in my thoughts. A lot of what's been occurring in the last couple of years from when I started to now is so much, hey, from the province, you got to do this and here's your timeline. So I don't ever discount that staff has been severely impacted by that. What you know, we may have kind of considered jokingly, but I think we need to seriously consider is the next time we get those, let them know, hey, we'll put you on our list, but here's all the other things we have to deal with. And we need to put a stop to it. We need to say, you know what? I'm sorry. We cannot address everything that you're handing to us to deal with when we have yet to finish what we need to deal with as a core service. And so I just want to put that out there as when we start getting these things to do massive changes that derail what's already on our list, I think we do have a voice to say, I'm sorry, but we have a massive work plan. We'll put you on the list. So just a thought.
Okay, so you didn't make a recommendation, and I'm in the process of misspelling things badly, but I just want to, I do have Director Cunningham, I have Director Weatherhead again as well. I just want to ask Chair Watson, if there was something along the lines of recommendation to the board that consideration be given to using LG cap funding to support land use planning that project, or to support land use planning projects, or to support land use planning. Something as generic as that, is that something you
Let's do it.
spoken about?
I think that at least enables us to bring the conversation forward from the planning perspective that the municipalities unfortunately have not been a part of, which is just the nature of our size. But yes, I think that articulates that if we as a group indicate that, then we've determined that, and that motion works for me.
Okay, so I'm just putting that in chat, not doing anything else with it. So I have to return to Director Weatherhead and Cunningham. Director Weatherhead.
Thank you. That motion I like better than mine. I would really like to go with that one. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I make a friendly amendment?
Well, the Director Weatherhead didn't make a recommendation. Are you making that recommendation? That would be recommend to the board consideration be given to using LG cap funding to support land use planning.
With one word added?
Yes.
Support core land use planning.
Okay, so sorry, you're seconding that motion, Director Chair Watson?
I moved it
when seconded with a friendly amendment to support core land use planning. And Carly, you have that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have something moved and seconded.
Yeah.
Did mover or seconder have anything else? I still have Director Cunningham. So I guess chat keeps jumping. I don't know what wants to do that in me. I see David off. So Cunningham, then David off.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I see someone else has their hand up. Okay. I appreciate that the motion has been made, and I will speak to the motion rather than to one that I was going to make, which is my one that lines. But first, to the chair, the staff, how much money is in that fund? And how much is left? Or has any been, like, where are we with it?
Through the chair, I think it's 263 that's looking to be allocated through the board report tomorrow.
263 tomorrow. And would be possible to have a whole bunch go towards our things with regards to land use planning?
That would be the subject of debate. I think, CEO, you were suggesting, Stuart, we not try and amend what's already on the thing.
I understand. Yep. That's not the point. The point was, is it possible? And you could say yes, but not likely because there are other needs or something like that. That's what I say, that's the question.
Yeah, through the chair, and I think that it probably is better to have that discussion at the board table tomorrow, because it's important to know what has been laid out that is already in motion that could be impacted by changing the allocation of the LG cap funds. And particularly, I'm thinking about the climate resilience coordinator position that's been approved for a couple of years. I do know that some of the ideas for climate action and the business cases around that was contemplated to be part of that individual's work plan, not all of it, but part of it. So there would be some need for staff to at least inform the board what could be lost, or what would be the impact of a significant shift in the allocation.
Is that you, as I made as a supplemental? The thing is, of course, is that those funds are important, and there are very good reasons for them going to the things that were mentioned already. And But however, what we have to think about priorities here in our mind. And if we think a priority is getting our planning ducks in a row, is way important because we have to do that before we move on to the other things that have been mentioned. Maybe that's what we need to do. But I am in no position at this point in time to be able to say, well, we'll take 50% or 20% or 10% or what we're going to do. So, would it be possible to have that, to be ready for that tomorrow so we can have an intelligent discussion?
To have a staff assessment of what amount they would ask for may be unfair overnight.
Well, no, I don't, that's not quite what I meant.
Sure.
I mean, the things that are already in the queue, okay, but it haven't been acted on, can be redacted if we think that there are other more important things. For example, is it more important that we study Kootenai Lake and hire somebody to study Kootenai Lake for 2 years, or to get our planning ducks in a row that would include such things as the bridges to Kootenai Lake? I don't know that, but that's the kind of position I think we're in.
So that would be the board discussion, and we will leave the dilemma to the board chair, whether we postpone one piece of the agenda until the rural concern is heard and then go back. I think it's got to be a board discussion. I don't know what more guidance we could give and be fair. You're good? We will go to Director Davidoff and Vandenberg.
Yeah, through the chair, I guess, to the mover, what does the word core, what is your definition of core planning?
Do you want me to go ahead, Director Jackman?
Yep, oh, please. I was going to say either Watson or Weatherhead may want to comment. You're sort of joined there. Go ahead.
Do you want to go? Me? Okay. So core would be the things that we're actually mandated to do, which is land use planning. So I'm just identifying that part of the reason why I'm identifying it in the motion is for, again, there's a distance between what municipalities understand we're doing and what we do have in the rural areas. So by identifying the core work, I'm trying to simplify the understanding that this isn't just extra work because we want to do some stuff. It's actually the core work we should have done. And I do also have the excerpt from the LGCAP funding to identify where this would fit as a criteria.
So you would bring it forward tomorrow?
Yep.
I'll bring forward tomorrow. I am trying to respect that. I'm trying to do a bit so that RAC understands where I'm going, but then not discount municipalities are not in this conversation.
Supplemental, Chair?
Yes, please go ahead, Director.
Yeah, so the reason I'm asking that, like, it doesn't mean that anything that's in the queue would be excluded and you would only address OCP for areas that have no, for electoral areas with no OCP. So I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on that. And Chair Watson, you explained it very well, and I understand what core means in your motion. Thank you.
So if I can, Director Hanegraaff sent, it's not to everyone, maybe a better word before I go on. Director Hanegraaff, I think your wording, would this be a friendly amendment, be proposed? Yeah. Go ahead.
Just say consideration be given to, instead of core planning, say mandated planning.
Because
I think it's less subjective.
The province mandates us to do things, Bill 44, blue. Is that a friendly amendment? Would we?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Good.
Everyone's good? Okay, thanks, Director Hanegraaff. Director Vandenberg.
I just want to make sure that the opportunity for tomorrow does not preclude any other suggestions. I mean, right now we are planning based, but I don't want the conversation to preclude something that we haven't thought of or is a great consideration. I just want to be clear that, well, I don't know if this conversation tomorrow is going to be focused on core mandated land planning without the ability to explore something else. So that would be my first question. I don't know where I would direct that. But, and then the second part of it is, yeah, the thing about mandated, as the chair has pointed out, is, and I heard Chair Watson, and I agree with her, is that if you continue to get the province layering more stuff on you, we can technically call it mandated, but I agree with her, like, no, that becomes bottom of the pile. We have our own stuff to deal with, and we will play that, push it to the end game as much as we possibly can, because it's killing a lot of our time. And this is part of the problem. So I guess I'm a little bit, we need to understand what mandated means, and at what point do you start prioritizing mandated? Like, I don't know. I'm just, we're in committee. I'm exploring the thoughts that occurred to me as we're discussing.
Tomorrow we will have a good conversation over this. The province mandated Bill 44 changes. West Vancouver said, no, we're not doing it. And then they did it anyway. So yeah, I appreciate that comment, that how serious are these new mandates. Just looking here, maybe in amazement, there are no other speakers to this recommendation for consideration be given to using LGCAP fund to support mandated land use planning. No further conversation? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? So that doesn't solve, that'll go to board tomorrow. That doesn't solve what our planning department's come here with today, but maybe it'll help us get some money in the pot. Should we move off of this topic?
Chair, I do have one more point in this conversation. With our, we're going to have a Community Works Fund conversation tomorrow. Yes. In the director's motion section. But is it permissible to utilize Community Works funds to do an OCP plan? So if a director wanted to kick in $100,000 to get their OCP done, it would pay for additional staff or contracting out or whatever. Is that possible through the chair to the CAO?
For the chair, we could talk to UBCM about that. I doubt it though, because usually planning processes are only allowed when they contemplate the creation of a physical asset at the end of it.
Okay, so I just thought I'd ask.
We can ask.
Yeah, I thought it was worth asking. Thanks, Chair.
So where are we? 7.4 quarterly report. A little snippet of where we are at. And I have to move myself ahead here. 7.4. Nelson, were you going to give us? You're still sitting there. You give us a little bit of a overview. You're not
order, Chair, if I may.
Go ahead. Point of order.
Are we indeed complete with 7.3? Yes, we put forward a motion. Tomorrow.
I have no further speakers. Did you need something else, or do you want to ask that?
Well, there is more than just that presentation within the report, so I don't know if Nelson is finished with that 7.3. We've kind of terminated any opportunity through a motion, but I just want to make sure that we're okay with where we're being done for now. I know it's not, just trying to be respectful.
No, that's fair. Presentation was completed. We did have one idea came out of it. We have a recommendation. Ask for any other hands or anybody. Didn't see hands raised. Nelson, do you need anything else? I know you need lots.
I do. Go ahead. How do you want us to approach the work plan then for the remaining items? Do you want us to go in date order, or how do you want to prioritize?
By default.
How do you want us to prioritize it?
It's by default, and you guys have an internal process. You have your own internal procedures for managing applications, and by default, I assume you're going to still try and beat your targets and applications. And you have your own internal process how to manage land use planning. And
Jack, what I'm asking about the remaining items one. So there's the various OCPs,
left hanging
discussion. I'm first.
Yeah, through the chair, that might be a question that needs to be answered after the funding question gets determined.
We would know if we have additional resources.
There's additional resources to be able to do two processes can go on.
And maybe just a clarifying question, and then what we heard before, we sort of broken down into two different approaches, and so am I clear that we're doing approach number 2, which is status quo with incremental adjustments, so we'll keep doing it as we've been doing?
So far, we haven't given much clarity beyond that. Vandenberg and Watson.
Yeah, just, and then for the report itself, for clarity, you had said that some of these items are stopped or are
Paused.
paused, yes. They tended to be on the right side of that presentation. So am I to assume that everything on the right side is a paused activity versus the left side? That was a clarity question I was wanting to ask.
The paused ones would include the Kootenai Lake Watercourse.
But it doesn't say that. I'm just thinking that physically it's located over there, so maybe that's all paused.
I'm just saying there's only 2 that are really, I would consider paused. The rest haven't started. So Kootenai Lake DPA project and Ag Policy Review project would be paused, and the others we'd be starting from the beginning, sort of. I mean, when I look at those OCP amendments for H, D, and E, that would be continuing on work that had begun previously. But so we're building on it. We're maybe not starting at square one, but yeah, it'd be beginning that project of going back to those communities.
Well, I have speakers here, so I have, well, right now, I guess we just have Watson and Cunningham. But it sounds like you may want to bring this back. Chair Watson, go ahead and Cunningham.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to note that I actually heard a lot of really constructive ideas over the past year of engagement. One was certain areas do want to sub-regionalize their conversation. So have a conversation at CVSC for what that looks like. That was one action I heard. Number 2 was looking at a standard OCP template using the area I-1 that has just been completed, and then start approaching that with directors around like, okay, so when we come to you, this is what we'll use and we'll amend what you need. Number 3 was the Complete Communities is going to offer some buffer community opportunities, highlight what those are and bring those back to us in terms, well, that'll have to go to the board because it'll include municipalities. And then those ones that don't fit in any of those pockets, get them on the docket. So I did not hear status quo after a year of conversation. I heard here's some exploratory ways of doing things and some ways of changing how we do them. So I don't think it's status quo. I think there's a middle ground, and it's been, in terms of how many times I've heard it, well articulated. But no, we did not choose full-on harmonization. We chose a hybrid approach, which was all the things I just said, and I may have missed a few DPAs when we get to them in terms of our community planning process, floodplain, all that stays as is because those are definitely needed. The only one I would add is that we put a moratorium on anything the province sends us and says we'll put you on the list, but maybe that one, that's a big one.
And Chair, I'd like to add to that we also
well, we have Director Cunningham, but if it's okay, Director Cunningham, because I think you had to refer this back to the teacher.
Yes.
But okay, so yeah, go ahead, Director David.
I'd just like to add to what Chair Watson just said is I agree. We are like it's incremental, but we are moving forward, and actually, it's more than incremental. And I think staff is hearing very clearly where ROC is at. And the other piece that should be added to that list, of course, we're exploring alternative forms of funding with the LGCAP. I mean, checking with UBCM on whether community works grants could qualify to support expediting OCP processes. So I think that list is what should be shared out as kind of guidelines and action items, and I think we did good work. I'm sorry. I know our area I process is almost ended, but I believe I've been here listening to these conversations for 14 and a half years, and I think we're moving to some incremental change that there is a consensus developing around the table. So that's my observation. So hopefully it's accurate.
Cool. A little bit of positive recognition is a good thing. So Director Cunningham, I think you have a good decision. Go ahead.
Yes, the motion was to refer this board going because I'd like to hear what staff has come up with, but also if it's referred to the next meeting, we will also have the benefit of knowing if there are possibly any additional funds coming, because that may change things. For example, if we get $100,000.
So it's mostly referred,
Yes, I'm sorry, I keep the reasons. I already heard that.
you're gonna refer this topic to be revisited next meeting.
That's right.
And do we have a second on referral?
Seconded.
We have a second, and I guess I'm just gonna ask staff, is it clear? Like the reasons or what with additional content update, it's clear what we're looking for, hopefully in a month?
Maybe if you can just tell me what you want from me.
Director Cunningham, I should have let you go before I took second, go ahead. On,
You're right, you have a list there that is quite extensive, but that list may be changed by what happens tomorrow. In other words, if I said you have an additional $100,000, you may also have some ideas how to spend it besides getting the hell out of Wyman.
Okay, so yeah, there will be perhaps new information to work with for next month. It's a good topic to bring back. So on the referral, to bring this topic back next month, all in favor of that? We see this again in a month. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. So Carly's captured that for next month's agenda, not for the board, just for us. So now I might venture into 7.4. Now, I see you logged off, Nelson. Did you want to highlight anything in that?
Chair, no, it's more for your information. Maybe just give me direction if this is helpful or if any changes you want and how we report those stats.
I like this, just like the way I saw this CSLAC the other day. Nice, simple to read, not big, huge Excel spreadsheets that always give me grief. It's pretty straightforward. Current items. Any comments from the committee on, you see, referrals, ALR, all nicely broken down. Any comments or questions from the committee? Okay, lots going on. Thanks very much, Nelson and Sadie. We do have a few items, and I'm not sure of environmental. There's no items for environmental services. We do have rural admin. We have community works applications for Woodbury Fire, for Balfour Fire Halls and standby generator, and for Duhamel Water System well pump replacement. We can move these as a block if we want. We can discuss them one at a time. But does the committee, is it block all three?
I'll second it.
Okay, now someone could call for division. Not hearing that. Any clarification, information we need about these three applications? Any questions? I better turn this back on. This once in a while.
The director wants and lost power.
Watch and lost power. Okay, so we will pause for 10 minutes, potentially, if that's okay, get up straight. We'll pause for 5 minutes. Let's pause till 11:40 and make sure that would be 7 minutes. Can we fix these clocks? For 5 minutes and get our colleague back online. Sorry, what was the?
This is text from Amy. I lost power. Can you move my community works motion for Woodbury?
Okay, well, procedures.
I'm just gonna say it's been moved.
Sure, but procedures say we'd still pause and give an opportunity to allow our colleague to rejoin the conversation. Plus, Uli wanted to come into the room. Sorry.
Is that community works?
Yeah.
Yes. Did somebody tell you that we finished off the coffee pot and didn't put on a new one? So you see, you brought your own.
I'm trusted that.
Yeah, but we're just paused for another 3 or 4 minutes.
I'm just gonna wait for her phone. I guess I could have phoned her. That would have been an easier, more direct approach.
Yes. Here we go.
I'll put you on speaker. Okay, she's here.
Can you hear us, Chair Watson?
I can, thank you.
Okay, so we will resume the meeting now at whatever time it might be, 11:36. So we've moved the 3 recommendations for Community Works as a block. And looking for comments, concerns, questions? Yeah, seeing none. All in favor of those going forward as a block tomorrow? You see lots of
Are you in
hands.
favor?
Any opposed?
I'm in favor, and I'm online now, so through my phone, so I'll hang up with you, Henny. Thank you.
Okay,
Oh, okay, good deal. Okay, so that's carried, goes to board tomorrow. So we are now at, let's make sure I get the right page here. Public time at 11:36. So we do have public on the line, no public in the room today. Any questions online? Valley Voice, Observer, any questions from any public for this committee? Just give you a minute to unmute if you have a question. I was chastised in the past for zipping past this, so. Okay, no questions from the public is what we will note in the minutes then. So all that is left is a motion to adjourn. Moved, and without objection, we are adjourned at 11:37. Thanks very much, everybody. Another long conversation, but at least some progress. Thank you.
Well, I think we
Thank you.
Thank you.